Have you ever stopped to think about how much money might be slipping through the cracks in your business? Not because of bad marketing or lack of leads, but because of what happens after the lead comes in. So many entrepreneurs are unknowingly leaving tens, even hundreds of thousands of dollars on the table, all because their follow-up systems aren't built to capture the opportunity that's already there. Welcome back to another episode of the Vital Wealth Strategies podcast. I'm your host, Patrick Lonergan, and today's conversation is one every business owner needs to hear. I'm joined by Jason Kramer, founder of Cultivize, and together we dig deep into how you can turn disorganized leads into organized revenue. Jason's built a system that helps entrepreneurs stop leaking profit, simplify their processes, and finally scale with confidence. In this episode, we'll talk about why most CRMs fail, how to design one that actually works for your business, and how automation and lead scoring can help you convert more sales without spending another dollar on marketing. Whether you're running your business out of spreadsheets or switched CRMs more times than you care to admit, this conversation will show you where the hidden money is hiding and how to get to it. And as you listen, I want you to think bigger than just software. The same systems that help you capture more revenue can also help you keep more of it through smart tax strategy and intentional planning. So when you're ready to start putting these ideas to work, head over to vitalstrategies.com/tax and start building out your custom tax strategy today. It's one of the best ways to make sure the money you're working so hard to earn actually stays in your business. That's vitalstrategies.com/tax, where smart entrepreneurs turn tax into leverage. All right, let's dive in. Here's my conversation with Jason Kramer from Cultivize. I'm excited about our conversation today with Jason Kramer from Cultivize. I think this is going to be fantastic. I think as entrepreneurs, we're leaving lots of money on the table. I don't know if we'll be able to quantify that, but I think as you get into this conversation, you're going to see opportunity in your business to start capturing more money. And so, Jason, thank you so much for joining us here today.
Thanks, Patrick, for inviting me.
Yeah. So I'm seeing the problems that the entrepreneur is facing. And I teased this a little bit, but I think at times can be drowning in disorganized leads. We can have great marketing funnels and then people come in and then what do we do with them? And we have clunky systems and inconsistent follow-up, all of which stifles our growth. And we think about how much money we spend on marketing and how much we desire to scale our business. And like, that's a real issue. And then the entrepreneur is just frustrated, feels overwhelmed, even despite their success. They're like, man, I know there's money left on the table. And we, as entrepreneurs, we want the confidence that those leads and relationships are being managed properly. And then at the end of the day, business leaders shouldn't have to choose between growth and efficiency and scaling. Scaling should be smart and measurable and sustainable. And so I think you're going to help us solve some of these problems today. So thanks so much for joining us.
I'll sure try.
Yeah, this is great. So can you give us a little bit of your background and explain Cultivize, and then we'll dig into it from there.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, the quick story is, I come from the world of marketing and advertising. So you might like, well, how does that have anything to do with CRM, right? What a kind of transition. So I owned an agency, actually being in the agency world for a little while, owned an agency for 16 years, did a lot of marketing, branding, web development, all that good stuff. And what I realized was that a lot of companies, like you just said, Patrick, spending a lot of money, right, on marketing efforts, on just networking, trade shows, you name it, all the things of the human capital time, as well as from owners trying to build and grow that business. But a lot of times the money was forgotten about in terms of the follow through. If that deal didn't close right away, then what happened to it, right? It probably fell by the wayside. And so after running that marketing agency for 16 years, I wanted to change. And for me, I thought this was a huge opportunity. To your point before as well, it's not that the solution is difficult. People don't know where to turn. And what I
Mhm.
wanted to do is create a company that could help guide. Almost think of it as, you're going on a hike, right, to a mountain that you've never been on. It's a lot easier to get up that mountain if you have a person that's been there hundreds of times before and knows the correct
Mhm.
path. And that's what Cultivize does. We know the path to how to get a CRM to, I'll say, play nice with not only your existing processes, but existing technology you already have for the business. We're not trying to come in and replace everything. We're trying to fix what's broken. And we do this, like I said, a lot of hand holding and really taking people through that whole process and trying to make it as smooth as possible.
Yeah, this is exciting. So I'm looking forward to getting into this because I think I've got lots of questions, and I'm gonna confess something here. I think we're on our fourth, maybe fifth CRM, and it's generally been because of my frustration with, this thing or that thing. And the solution probably was just call Jason and just understand how to use the CRM. I'm just thinking through our process here. So I assume we should start with, I don't know, I want to call it an audit. Like let's just assess everything that we've got going on. Can you walk us through like, am I on the right path here? Are we assessing the current situation before we start to build a plan?
Well, we have to, right? We have to understand where the gaps are, where the problems are before we come up with any type of solution. And so the common things that I always talk to people about, and certainly anybody listening today can do this stuff, right, for their business, whether you're the owner listening or someone else in an organization or what have you, is write down on paper what your process is to acquire a new customer. And it may sound very basic, but when that phone rings, ding, 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 right, or the email comes through, right, your inbox or the website lead comes through, what's the first thing that happens? And who handles that? What's the second thing that happens after that? And so on and so on. And what you're going to define is your process for not only your sales process, but for your pipeline. And I think a lot of businesses don't have a clear pipeline. We see it all the time, Patrick, where in fact, I was just talking to an organization in Manhattan this week, and they got 6 salespeople. Everybody has their own Google sheet, and everybody's got tracking different information in a different format.
Mm-hmm.
It's impossible for anybody to leverage that data in any concise way. And so if you put that on paper, you're probably going to stumble upon things that you didn't realize were actually happening, especially if you're growing at a decent pace and you're bringing on new people. If you're relying on those people just coming up with their own process and not following what's worked for other people in your organization, it's really going to lead to a lot of problems down the road.
Yeah, it's so true. We've seen businesses surprisingly running a massive amount of data through a Google Sheet and trying to keep track of it all. And it's like it's not a database, It's just a way to capture the information. There's not a good way to extract good info out of there. So is it okay if we take a little left turn and talk about CRMs for a second?
Sure.
Can you walk us through, and I'm sure it depends on industry, but can you walk us through who you see as the big players in the CRM space that if somebody's listening to this going, yeah, I need to make a change. I'm running out of a Google Sheet or Post-it notes or what have you. Where should they start? And I know that the answer, let me preface that. The answer is call Jason and let him understand your business before. But like I'm just curious what you're seeing is some useful tools out there that are doing a nice job in the marketplace.
That's not to derail us, but there's a real estate broker that I'm good friends with, a family kind of friend. Her name is Jackie. And so if you know anything about Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul, real estate signs all over Better Call Jackie. And I mean, then she's just like dominates like the neighborhood because like everybody's a catchy thing, right? So keep on saying, well, you should just call Jason. So I don't think it's so much for me about naming off any particular platform. We do have a research guide, which I'll get to a little bit later on, and where people can find that on what to look for when evaluating your current system or trying to find a new one. But the most important thing is these 3 things. So the first is, who on the team is going to be using this piece of software? What role are they going to have with it? And where are they going to use it? Are they going to be using it in their car, on to the next appointment, and they need to access it from their phone? Are they going to be sitting at a desk? The other thing you have to factor in is, what are your goals? As a business, what are you trying to track and to achieve? A lot of times people look at the features and benefits and, we all say it, the shiny object syndrome. And they're like, ooh, look at this. Or, hey, my buddy over here loves HubSpot. HubSpot must be amazing. I'm going to use HubSpot. And then 6 months in, you're like, HubSpot sucks. It's terrible.
Yeah.
It's not terrible. It's a great platform, but it may not be the right platform for you. So understanding what are you trying to get out of it, right, I think is super simple. And you don't have to go really down the rabbit hole of goals. It's just like, we want to track, ROI on marketing spend, or we want to track the pipeline. We want to do this. We want to do that. What are those high level goals? And I think another 2 things that are really important and always go overlooked is, where do you see yourself in a year, 2 years, and 3 years with your business? And more importantly, how the CRM is going to play a role into that. Often companies are looking at their wallet and they're saying, okay, well, we don't need anything really expensive. We don't need Salesforce right now. We don't need to spend $100,000, on installation. But if you're saying, okay, well, we're going to go for our Series 2 funding, or we're going to go for this, and we're going to grow, you may need that platform in a couple of years, and it may be more cost effective to enter it now than switching over later on. And then the
Yeah.
third part is support. What I often find, Patrick, is the lower the cost when it comes to SaaS software, usually the more crappy the support is.
Mm.
So if you're getting something for free, you're paying a few shekels a month, you're probably getting really bad support. And
Yeah.
you need that support because you need somebody to be able to answer questions. So you get on a phone call, get on a video call, walk you through some strategy. You're not going to find that at these lower price point, systems.
Hmm.
So those are some of the things that I would say to look for if you are in the market of evaluating what you currently have or looking for something brand new.
Yeah. Yeah, this is great because we've, in all of the softwares that we've tried, we had Salesforce for a while and I think it's a fantastic tool, but for us to make it do anything, it just cost tens of thousands of dollars every time we wanted to build a workflow out in
Right.
there. And then every time we wanted to change that thing, it cost us more money and I was like, this is not, this is too
That's
expensive
yeah, there's no
for us to
scale. Yeah.
be able to run our firm out of, to make it do the things we want to do. And so we ended up at we kind of went too far the other way. We found something that was, pretty customizable, but it was too simple. It lacked some of the complexity we needed from like a workflow point of view. And so we ended up kind of in our Goldilocks position after all said and done. But one of the things you highlighted that I think needs to be acknowledged too is like, switching CRMs creates all sorts of brain damage. It is a lot of work to get all the data out of the old one, map it into the new one. You're spending lots of time and energy on the front end. So having an assessment done to figure out, where you're going and what your growth trajectory looks like and make sure you have something that works with all of that is a critical piece. So, and I also want to highlight, I had a friend of mine, one of our clients, they use HubSpot and they are like, you know, deep into it and it does all sorts of amazing things. And my eyes were like, that would be incredible to have. And then, I talked to a marketing firm that we work with and they're like, yeah, it's an amazing tool, but you better be ready to spend, to get all of those features to run your marketing. And it's like, okay, I don't think we need all those shiny things yet.
Right.
So,
Right.
yeah, this is good. Okay, so now we've spent some time assessing our CRM and making sure that it's, what we want out of it. Is it checking those boxes? Now, can you talk us a little bit through the design phase and what it takes to like build something that everybody uses and uses well?
Yeah. So again, it goes back to what I said before. What type of information are you collecting about your customers, about your prospects? One of the mistakes we always see and it's mostly in CRM, so it could be in other business software, is like blank text boxes. Like they're like the bane of my existence. I mean, like you need to have consistent data, right? And so you go back
Hmm.
to the spreadsheet thing, right? And if people are just entering things in and typing things in, and there's no drop down menus, and yes, you could have those in the spreadsheets, but they're not as controlled, right, and locked
Hmm.
down. And so that's one of the things we look at is what are you using today? We just brought on a company that does pool construction and sells spas and all these things about a year ago, and everything was paper. They didn't have anything digital except their service department. So we looked at all their forms. We said, okay, if somebody fills out a contract, show us what the contract looks like, show us what this looks
Hmm.
like, and this and that other thing looks like. And then we just digitized everything. We created digital formats for all of the ways that they're collecting data. We're also look at existing data too. That's really important. And then the final piece, kind of like getting forward, going past that, is looking over the overarching um, problems and trying to find those quick wins. I think that's the biggest thing, Patrick.
Hmm.
There's so much, like you just said before, like your buddy that has HubSpot, they're doing all these amazing things. Yeah, you can do those things, but are they needed right now? Like what are
Hmm.
the critical things that we can do? And one of the things we might touch on this, but it's something that probably will ring a bell to a lot of people listening, especially in the B2B space. Maybe even if you're doing like a home service type business, is quote follow up. That's the number one thing we see in leakage. You spend all this time and money and effort to generate a quote. You follow up for, a few weeks, for 6 weeks, for 2 months. And eventually you just give up because you haven't heard from them or they haven't made a decision. It
Yeah.
doesn't mean that person's not going to buy.
Hmm.
There's a quick story I just want to quickly share. So when we've done this for a lot of different businesses, but we brought on a roofing business. The family run business, they're doing about $8 million a year, give or take, in revenue in Massachusetts. And what we noticed is that they're doing about 1,000 quotes a year. They have a small sales team of just a few people. And after like that 5, 6 week mark, and this is after they went to the home, like talked to the homeowner, like introduced themselves, did the proposal, did all this work, spent all this money to get the lead, they would just give up because they didn't have time
Mhm.
to keep chasing. And I
Yeah.
said to the owner, I said, listen, we need to build an automation sequence because the salesperson can't do it. We're going to create a virtual salesperson within the CRM. And wouldn't you know,
Mhm.
Patrick, that in just about 4 months, we closed over $600,000 in revenue just from this automation sequence, just being like, knock, knock. Like, did you hire
Yeah.
anybody? And if you did, that's great. Can you let us know why? And then he
Mhm.
started getting all this feedback from a quick one question survey we did. Oh, my friend did it. My neighbor referred somebody else, or price was too high, or
Mhm.
whatever. And they were just shocked at how efficient
Yeah.
that process was.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic, and I've got a similar story. We would have a prospect come through our pipeline, and we had lots of gaps in our I'll say our sales process on the
Mhm.
follow up side. If somebody was like, "No, not now," I'd be like, "Okay," and they would basically like exit my brain,
Yeah,
and that was
disappear. Yeah,
a problem, because. But what we did was we put those people on our podcast email list. So every week they get a new email just saying, "Hey, here's some new cool content." It's shocking how many responses we get to that. Like, "Hey, can we set up a time to meet?" And it'll be like the subject, like, Jason Kramer tells you how to not lose millions of dollars,
yeah,
because of your crappy CRM. And they'll be like, "Can we set up a meeting?" I'm like, "Yes, we can." So it just staying in front of people, like that was a really poor example, but it just shows like if you just stay connected with folks, imagine what my response rate would be if I like actually had a sequence where I followed up with folks saying, "Hey, now it's time. Let's go. Taxes are going to be due here soon. Let's come up with a tax strategy." So
yeah. And
this is good.
absolutely. And the other thing, Patrick, too, is a lot of times people that we talk to, they may be listening, thinking the same thing about them say, is that they don't want to be salesy. They don't want to be pushy. They're like, okay, well, if the person's not ready, like, and there are other businesses that are very salesy, right? And they're goal
Mhm.
oriented to close that deal. Education goes a long way. Almost
Yeah.
all the clients we work with, like going back to that pool company, if someone's like, "Hey, like, I'm thinking about it for next year," they're not gonna get emails being like, "Hey, ready to sign the contract? Do you want to come into the showroom? Blah, 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 blah." Right? They're just gonna get like, "Hey, if you hire somebody, this is the 10 things you should know about hiring a pool company." Or
Mhm.
the next email, "Did you also know the hidden costs about buying a pool? Like you have to pay for landscaping and all these other things. Here's some resources." And so it
Yeah.
just keeps educating through that buyer's journey. So if they are ready and when they are ready, they're like, "Oh, this company really helped me. They provide a lot of great information. I was able to use it, and you're more like likely to go in that direction." And so, the other piece too, which tying into all of what we're talking about, is the people that are not knocking on your door. And what I mean by that is, I always use the example of a car dealership. Okay,
Mhm.
you and I both have plenty of things to do, I'm sure, on a Saturday or Sunday morning, right? Unless we're in the market to buy a car or we actually love cars, probably not going to a dealership and like walking in and looking around and sitting in the car. Great. Right.
Yeah.
So
Right.
think about your CRM where you don't know who's walking in the door, right? Because they could be going to your website. To your point, they could be looking at your weekly newsletter, your monthly newsletter. But do you know? Like, unless they're calling or emailing you, you don't know. And a good CRM is tracking all of that activity. And there's a powerful function of a good CRM called lead scoring. And we could design lead scoring to say, okay, well, if Jason comes to our website and does this, it's kind of like a low tier sort of like, um, behavior, right? They're just looking at our blog.
Mhm.
We'll give them 5 points. But if they go to our pricing page, we're going to give them 100 points because that shows intent. And
Yeah.
now all of a sudden, out of the thousands of people you got in your database, you got, your 10% that have a high lead score. And those are the people that the sales team should be tracking down and following up with. And I
Yeah.
can't tell you how many times, Patrick, like I call people, I start seeing that needle move. And I'm like, "Hey, Patrick, what's going on? It's been 6 months since we spoke." And they're like, "Oh, what good timing." And like, meanwhile, I know they were on the website for the last couple of days, right?
Sure.
I don't say that, but I use that timing to my advantage. And we've
Yep.
closed a tremendous amount of deals just with those insights. And to your point before, it's low cost, right? Because I'm not spending money to bring that person back into my wheelhouse. They're already there.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's brilliant. And it is amazing how valuable information is, and we have so much of this available to us, but
Mhm.
if we don't have that data flowing through to us in a productive way that I can see it and quickly go, "Hey, here's an opportunity that I need to go seize." It's one of those leaks that is just costing me so much money, and so I think this is great. Let's see. I'm trying to think through some other email opportunities that are out there. I just feel like this is such an important piece of the discussion and kind of keeping people top of mind. Now, are you helping execute on those email strategies? Is that something you're like, hey, let's create this nurture sequence, or is that more of, hey, we find this opportunity for you and go create this yourself, or have your marketing team do that? How are these sequences coming together to make sure that we're capitalizing on this?
Yeah, we're the architect, we're the contractor, and we're the building inspector. We
Hmm.
do it all. So I mean, we can work with marketing teams internally, of course, and marketing
Hmm.
agencies on behalf of our clients. But yeah, a lot of clients come to us and want help developing the strategy, the cadence. How many emails is the right number of emails? What's the frequency of those emails? What should the emails say? Right. We do that a lot, and I think the one thing you talked before about what else with email, a huge component, and again, this is more of the HubSpots of the world, have functionalities like this. We have something called dynamic content. And just to briefly explain, not to get technical at all, but everybody knows personalization. Hey,
Hmm.
Jason, right? Or it's like your company name is inserted into the subject message. That's been around for decades and decades and decades.
Yeah.
What's newer in the last, 5, 10 years, and it's gotten a lot more, we'll get more robust as AI comes in the mix, is dynamic content. And what that means is that you could have a list of 1,000 people and you could have one newsletter, but the headline, the graphic, the content, the subject message, all elements of the email can be completely unique for every individual based on something you know about them in the database. So if you're sending that email to an HR manager versus a sales manager versus the owner of a business versus somebody in one industry or another industry, we can completely reformat that email. So when they get it, it's as close to home as possible to
Yeah.
be on point with what they expect to visually see, but also more importantly, the language that is going to get them to take some action. And that's a completely underutilized function of a lot of these platforms,
Hmm.
that dynamic content feature. Everybody's just doing the spray and pray, and they're sending out a newsletter to, great example I have going back a number of years ago, working with a children's museum. They had a database of like 30,000 people. This was sponsors, right? Donors, people that just walked in for the day and never came back, people that have birthday parties there, you name it. And their newsletter, Patrick, it was like, the Bible. I mean, it was so long. It was like, you heard the term infinite scroll. It would just go
Yeah.
on and on and on. I think it had like 42 links in an email. It was outrageous. And I'm
Yeah.
like, what are you guys doing? I'm like, A, you probably have really crappy deliverability because you have so many links in your email and so many images, and there was a whole world of problems with it. But
Hmm.
nevertheless, you're sending so much information and you're trying to cover every single possible person that's going to be on here. Why not just split it up? One email for donors, one email for sponsors, one email for people that came in just for the day, trying to sell
Hmm.
them a membership to come back, and that's what we eventually did. But it was just like, oh my God, and that happens. I can't tell you how often, because why? It's easy and it's quick, and
Hmm.
when you're using a very basic email service provider like a MailChimp or something, you don't really have any other choice. Like that's the easy way to do it.
Yeah, yeah, this is great, and you bring up a point that I'm curious your perspective on, because I see so many tools out there, right? Like, I can have my CRM do things like manage my email list and send the email and all those other things, or I can get a another software to do those pieces for me. And so, how much? Because I'm going to share a little bit of my bias, and I'm happy to have you correct this. I feel like oftentimes when softwares get out of their lane,
Mhm.
okay, like let's say they're a really good email marketing uh, software. And then they're like, hey, you know what we're going to do? We're going to bolt on some CRM, or we're a great CRM. We're going to bolt on some of these other like pieces. They tend to do those other things poorly. And so my thought is like, okay, how do we get the software to all talk to each other, and let's build out the suite that just fits really nicely for us. Do you see the best success happen in sort of all in one platform, or is it let's bring all of the right tools together, make sure they talk to each other, and go from there? Because
Yeah.
rarely do they seem to talk well. So that's a problem I see as well. So yeah, I'm curious your perspective on that.
So I'll say this. I mean, there's never going to be one piece of software that I found in my 20 plus years almost doing this that is going to solve 100% of the needs, right? You're going to
Mhm.
get close. You might get to 80%, 90%, with one solution. But I will say that when it comes to email, having a system that's capable, now mind you, if you have a CRM that's not capable and is doing a really poor job and the emails look like crap, then don't
Mhm.
listen to what I'm about to say. But if you have a system that can do it well, having email part of your CRM, I think, is just a complete game changer. And the reason being is now the salesperson has real time access to that data. So if they're
Mhm.
getting the email, they're clicking a link, going to the website, and they're doing something, and they're not filling out a form. They're just kind of noodling around, and that data comes back and increases the lead score. Well, that's effective, right? Because now the salesperson knows, okay, this person is taking some action. But if you have your email over a MailChimp and someone's looking at open rates and click rates, but nothing else is being done with the data, then there's no value, right? Because you're spending
Mhm.
all this time and money and effort to send that email, but it's not influencing and impacting the sales team. And so, yes, there are plenty of systems. I mean, specifically when it comes to like building landing pages, right? There's a
Mhm.
lot of systems that can do that. They do them okay. Much better off going into your WordPress site or whatever you have and building your landing page there.
Yeah.
So I agree with you that there are certain functions while the feature might be there. You know, for example, social media posting, I think, is a big one. There's a lot of tools out there, especially CRMs that can post onto Facebook, LinkedIn, what have you, but the reporting isn't great, right? Or it doesn't
Yeah.
exist, or you're limited on the type of posts you can do. You're much better off going to a platform built specifically for that. If social media is important to you, right? If it's a big part of
Yeah.
your marketing, you need that data. So my answer is gray and is not
Yeah.
black and white. It's a little gray because I think it comes down to like what component. But
Mhm.
email, I would say if your system has it and can do it, get rid of what else you're doing and push all your email through your CRM.
Yeah. As we've been talking about all the ways entrepreneurs lose money through disorganized systems and missed opportunity, it reminds me of another area where so many business owners do the same thing: their taxes. Every year, entrepreneurs overpay simply because they don't have a strategy. They wait until tax season, hand everything to their accountant, and hope for the best. But what if you could design your tax plan the same way you design your CRM? Intentionally, strategically, and built to capture every opportunity. That's exactly what we help you do at vitalstrategies.com/tax. You'll discover proven IRS compliant strategies that help entrepreneurs keep more of what they earn and redirect those dollars into building real wealth. So before another year slips by, visit vitalstrategies.com/tax and start building your strategy today. Because the money you save in taxes is the easiest money you'll ever make. Yeah, this is good. It also brings up another thought in my mind because we actually have, I'm going to admit to two different CRMs. Our one CRM, we effectively run our business out of that. It creates workflows for our clients, and if somebody does something, we can track all of that. So, like
Mhm.
right now, we've got one of our advisors is in Greece, and when somebody's out of the office, I'm like, be out of the office. I don't need you,
Right.
checking your email and doing all that stuff. And I know exactly where all the client work is because I can go into the CRM and see the workflows. I can see the email communication. It's all
Mhm.
captured there, and I think it's beautiful. Um, but the thing I've noticed about our CRM is like it's great at all of those things. It's not a great marketing tool. It's not great at all these other pieces. So we're sort of like, you know, prospects live over here in one system, and our clients live over here in another system, and they sort of migrate over when they convert. Should I stop doing that? Or is it like, nope, it depends on your situation, and that sounds like it's a decent solution. I would love it if it all lived in the same ecosystem, but I haven't found a way to make it all work well together. So yeah, I'm curious your perspective on
Sounds like we might need to set up a consult there, Patrick.
that.
Um, you
I'm
know,
feeling
I
it.
mean, I don't
Yeah.
know what system it is, but I will say, trying to get all that data in one place is certainly easier. You
Hmm.
mentioned something before about data connecting, right, from one platform to another. Sometimes you can do that through a tool like Zapier or other tools. Sometimes you need to spend 30, $40,000 to connect two pieces of software,
Yeah.
and build a custom integration. Is it worth it? It really becomes down to like, well, what's the other side of the coin? So for example, if you say, hey, Jason, I spent $500 a month on marketing. I really would love to get my marketing data connected to my CRM, but I really don't know the best way to do that. I would say, well, if you're spending $6,000 a year on marketing, may not be worth the investment, right? To move to a new CRM, or to try to connect that data, because in my opinion, the ad spend would be a little low. Right? But be
Hmm.
like, hey, we're spending 25 grand a month or 50 grand a month. Okay, yeah, you definitely want to make sure that all that data is connected, because you're spending a lot of money, right? And you want
Hmm.
to make sure you're getting a return on that investment. So
Yep.
I think there's a lot of, not a lot, but there's a few different moving pieces to that spoke that you'd
Hmm.
have to kind of figure out what makes the most sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is fantastic. I'm also curious what you see. Like, I love that you're consulting. You're not just handing me a software platform and saying, "Hey, go do this thing," because I see there's so much that needs to be built out around this, both from a internally, let's make sure the software is doing what we want it to do, but then there's also a system and process side of things with our, I'll say, our sales team. Like, okay, hey, these things need to happen. When this thing happens and you see this sort of light shine up on your CRM, you need to go do this thing, right? And so, how much of the coaching are you getting into on the sales and marketing side to be like, hey, we optimize this thing. Now, here's what you need to do to go capitalize on it.
So what's really interesting about that question is that, and this is, not to put down any sales managers that we work with or spoken to at all, but we are often asked to say, hey, our team listens to us, but I think they would value an outside perspective. And
Hmm.
often asked not only in the beginning to set the stage and say, hey, team, here's what we've built. Here's why it's going to make your life so much simpler. It's going to reduce, you doing all this busy paperwork and repetitive tasks, and free up, 5 hours a week for you. They can go sell now and stop doing all this
Hmm.
other busy work. So we try to position it as the value add, right?
Hmm.
We're going to make their lives better by this improvement. But we also stay on board to be an accountability partner.
Hmm.
You know, as much as we're training a sales team, Patrick, we're also training managers. We're changing the, training the business owners, we're training everybody in the organization. This is new, right? They've never had this platform before. So we can't expect anybody at any level to know exactly what to look for and to recognize where there's issues, right? So even
Yeah.
though it's a great system, doesn't mean there's not going to be issues. So that's why we do play that role to say, okay, let's keep an eye on things, right? For at least 6 months or a year at a minimum, right? Make sure everything is being done the way it's supposed to be done. It's
Hmm.
one thing for a salesperson or sales manager to say, we want Jason to make 50 calls a day, right? And we want him to log his notes and log his calls and to do all these other things. Great. So it's a great goal. Are you tracking that? Are you making
Hmm.
that Jason's doing that? Because if you're not, then what's the goal without having a way to measure the goal? And
Yeah.
so that's, yes, we do help with that aspect of it for sure.
Yeah, this is so good. And you just reminded me of something I was going to bring up earlier. One of the things like we're faced with right now, let's use this conversation as an example. I'm like, Jason, this is amazing. Okay. But where we're at in our business and in the fourth quarter, like coming into the fourth quarter, is we are so busy. It is the busiest time of year. If you want any of my time and attention to work on, building out our CRM, I don't have, you're not going to get any of my time or any of the team's time. So like I'm an interested buyer, but I'm not interested until like January 1st at the earliest. And so it's almost like going back to our conversation around like if we don't have a follow-up system, we don't have a way to like,
Mhm.
because I here's the problem with our, as an entrepreneur, I think everybody thinks about my business the way I do. Like it's got to be top of their mind, right? No, it is not. It is not top of mind at all. And I'm going to forget about this conversation by January. It doesn't mean it's not important to me, but it's like, man, I need somebody to follow up with me and go, hey, you mentioned at the beginning of the year we should connect. Here I am, and making sure we have good systems and processes in place. Or even if I don't mention that, if I just kind of go quiet, it's because like, hey, this is super cool. I just need to like set it aside and I'll get to it eventually. And if you don't stay sort of top of mind for me, end up in my email inbox or my actual, mail inbox or phone call or what have you, like it's going to be one of those things that just sort of goes by the wayside. So I wanted to bring that point up as well, because I think it's important. The timing piece, we generally create some hallucination as to why the buyer's not buying. And so I think there's a lot of opportunity to just stay in front of people. When the timing's right, they will pull the trigger, especially when you've built trust, connecting with them, on the front end. So
Yeah. And
good.
I would just also say to counteract what you said, that I don't think
Mhm.
it would go by the wayside. I think that come January, you may forget about me if I was not doing my role, right, to follow up or
Mhm.
stay in touch. But you'd probably buy or work with another consultant, right? That's going to help with the CRM. Because you're like, okay, like I'm freed up, my busy season's over. Now I need to pay attention to CRM. I remember I was talking to somebody about it. I don't remember who. I'm just
Mhm.
going to do a Google search. I'm going to find a new consultant.
Yeah.
So now you're
Yeah.
still in the market, but now you're not buying from the person that originally gave you the ideas that fell in love with or got inspired by. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, it's so critical. And you mentioned things too, like phone call, LinkedIn. I mean, there's so many touch points and I get it. Some salespeople are scared or they don't like to make a phone call. They don't feel comfortable doing
Mhm.
whatever it is, right? But at the end of the day, you can't just rely on email. There has to be other ways
Mhm.
to do that. And I think, today is I was gonna say tonight, I don't know why I said tonight, but today is an interesting time. Not today, literally, but
Mhm.
with AI, there's so many tools out there and things you can do to stay in front of people, and the big push, and I listen to a lot of podcasts as well. And I know that um influencer marketing is like the new thing, right? It's not about putting out messages and saying, "Hey, this is what I sell. Do you want to buy from me? And this is how I get help." It's about commenting on people's posts and following people and just being involved in the conversation. Because the one thing, and I'm not a LinkedIn expert by any means, and I do fairly well with it, but is when I'm commenting on people that I'm not connected to, and they're like a second, third tier connection, and they have, 40, 50,000 followers and they respond, there's interaction.
Mhm.
People that I'm connected to see that in their feed. They're like, Jason commented on this, and then here's like a thing going on. And so it just shows that you're like in the circle of whatever topic you're talking about. And eventually, when that person has some level of interest, they're like, oh, yeah, I remember Jason's talked a lot about CRM. Let me go over to
Yeah.
Jason and see what he thinks about this, question I have.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's good. Because I think in our connected world, trust is really hard, and I think if I can go, man, I trust Jason because I see, him showing up regularly in these circles. And if, that trust can be transferred, if John trusts Jason, then I can trust Jason. So it's like, that's all really good. And another point too, that I think is, going back to our phone calls and some of those other things. That's what marketing is. It's a bid for attention, and the old school mail might be the easiest way to get somebody's attention now, because I'm bombarded digitally. And
Oh, yeah.
when was the last time you received a handwritten letter? So it's like, oh, cool. Like, I'm going to respond to that. I also remember I got this enormous like not package, but like letter in the mail, and I opened it up like, what is this thing? I had to call the guy. I didn't want to buy, but I was like, "Hey, great job! Like, you got my attention. Um, you keep me on your list, but I'm not interested right now." So it worked.
You
It's sort
have
of
to be
like,
clever. I mean, you have to
mhm.
stand out, and the one thing that really, and again, I'm not the marketer, right? I don't do lead gen, but the one thing that I always find crazy is when people reach out to me, Patrick, and I'm sure it happens to you, and they're like, "We can get you 1,000 leads a month or this, right?" And all this. I'm like, I don't want 1,000 leads a month. I'm
Mhm.
happy with 10 leads a month. If those
Mhm.
10 leads are super qualified and I have
Yeah.
a 50% chance of closing those 10 leads and I bring on 5 new clients,
Yep.
I'm good. Like, I don't
Right.
need the 1,000 that are never going to respond to anything, and I
Yeah.
think that's what a lot of people focus on is the volume. We need volume.
Mhm.
We need volume. We need volume. And to me, the quality is way better than the quantity.
Absolutely.
And I think that's something also CRM can certainly help with too, is, you know, solidifying, that approach.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's an adage, and I'm gonna screw this up, and I apologize to the author that I don't know. It's either 100 raving fans or 1,000 raving fans, and it's like, if you get to that number, you have a successful business, you know?
Mhm.
And so I think about what you just talked about, and there's a saying that we like to talk about internally, and it's if our visibility outpaces our capability, it hurts our credibility. It's like, you know, what you're talking about. If I ran a Super Bowl ad, you know, and I had more leads than I could possibly manage, like it blows my business up in a bad way. You know, I'm not able to serve all those people well. And then everybody's like, oh, that organization's a joke, right? So we have to have the right visibility at the right point. And I think that leads us to scaling, right? I think the things you're talking about are not, you know, we could take our marketing spend and double our results by just making sure all the leaks are plugged, right? You know, all the leads that are coming in, you know, we don't have to do anything new. We just have to make sure that we're capitalizing on things. And I think that allows us to now scale our business in a way that is, you know, efficient, effective, and is pretty exciting. So I don't know if you have any thoughts or comments on that, but I think scale is kind of the last piece of this whole thing when we.
No, yeah, and it's also about the existence. Listen, if you've been in business for, 3 years, 5 years, 10, 20 years, you have a lot of data, hopefully. You have data
Mhm,
somewhere, and everybody's like, "Spend, spend, spend, go to a trade show, do the AdWords, do this, do that, host a webinar." But you might be sitting on a gold mine. And if you're able to even go back to even your accounting software and say, pull up all the customers that spend, more than X with us in, their lifetime or their per year. And you're like, okay, well, what was the last time they bought? They haven't bought from us in 2 years, but they were spending, $80,000 a year with us. Why they stop buying?
mhm,
Somebody dropped the ball, right? So going back and trying to rekindle relationships with your old data, I mean, it's like a no-brainer, you know?
yeah,
You have to have the data, we have to clean the data, we have to kinda do some stuff and massage it, but if you have that data, that could be a huge value add, and people often don't think about there's 3 components, I think, right? So there's the old data to
mhm,
increase revenue, there's the upsell and the cross-sell, and
mm,
there's so many companies that just don't do those 3 things. They're just net new, net new, net new, net new, and that's all they live by, you know? And it's and some businesses, listen, they don't complement a cross sell, or upsell opportunity, right? There's nothing to sell them else except this one thing. Fine,
mhm,
I get that. But most businesses have something else they could sell. You call an exterminator because you got bees. Well, they should be upselling you on their yearly maintenance package.
mhm, yep,
I mean, and it usually works, right? It's like, well, we got this problem. If you hire us for the year, you probably won't have the problem next year. Okay, sounds good. Where do I sign? You know?
yep. Yeah, yeah, no, Jason, this is so good, and my encouragement is, have people go to cultivize.com. Your website's great. You've got a lot of really good information, and it's also, you've created uh, a link especially for us, afterthelead.com. People can go there, that have listened to the podcast, and you've got all the easy ways to connect with you there. I think setting up a time to just talk through, hey, where am I at? Where am I going? What problems do you see in my um, you know, my pipeline, you know, my CRM, that you know, I can start plugging those leaks and then increase my revenue. I think that's fantastic. So I know we've talked about a lot of things. Is there anything else we need to cover that we haven't covered so far?
I think on the world of CRM, I think we pretty much exhausted, everybody's their input a capability, right, to absorb
Yeah.
all the information. But I will say this, the other thing to think about is because lots of people have so much software. So let's forget about CRM for a minute. It's just
Hmm.
software in general,
Right.
right? If you're the owner listening, right? Or if you're not even the owner, but you can get access to a bank statement. And my little tip here is look at your last 6 months and start going through with a highlighter. What are we spending money on? That's a recurring charge every month,
Hmm.
and are we using that tool, whatever it is? Are we using that thing? And it could be even like, the cleaning service that comes once a week, and you could kind of cut that back to
Hmm.
twice a month, right? Whatever the recurring charges are. People often sometimes will say, "Well, I don't have the money to invest in the CRM or in something else."
Hmm.
We say, "Okay, well, where is that money being spent? That you're spending money today? Where
Right.
can we free up money?" And that's often something that, and I know there's tons of apps, that they advertise on, and I don't have
Hmm.
any of them, myself. I just kind of like monitor that, but
Yep.
there I've been caught myself. It's like, oh man, I thought I canceled that piece of software. Last 6
Yeah.
months has been charging me like $80 a month, and like I don't
Yeah.
even use it anymore. And so, that's another good exercise too. And that's it's not going to make a huge difference, right, on the
hmm
P&L, but it's a ways just to kind of free up and to kind of get you in the mindset of like, are we as fine tuned as we can be with our business?
Yeah. Yeah. And I want to maybe challenge one of the things you said, because
Sure.
I think the raindrops fill up the ocean. And I think all of these little efficiencies that we start to create start adding up to real dollars on the bottom line. And
Yeah.
so I think people should do exactly what you said in their business. I'm a finance nerd, so I run all of my expenses through QuickBooks personally too. And I go through and I categorize everything, and I'm like, could we be subscribed to another video streaming system? And we have one TV in our entire house and nobody ever watches the thing. I'm like, we're paying hundreds of dollars a month just to not watch TV. This is insane to me. They suck you in with like that one show that you need this new thing and it's free
Oh,
for
yeah.
30
Or then you
days. And
forget
then
to cancel.
2 years later, you've forgotten about it. And you're like, man, I got to get rid
Well,
of
I
this. So,
think that the biggest culprit too is like, and listen, this is not, it might get a little personal, but I remember this is going back years ago, but, and I don't even know why I was looking, but I'm like, noticed that like hundreds of dollars was being spent at like Dunkin' Donuts every month. And I'm
mhm,
like, what's going on? Like, I don't go to Dunkin' Donuts. Like, who's going to Dunkin' Donuts in the family so often,
yeah.
And I was like, talking to my wife, my kids, and I'm like, hey guys, like, I don't want us going to Dunkin' Donuts, but I don't think we need to be dropping like $400 a month at Dunkin' Donuts.
hmm
Like we could probably make a bagel or get her make her own coffee or whatever it is,
Right.
right? And it wasn't nickel and diming. It was just like it's like it was excessive, in my
Yeah.
mind of like you're trying to control budgets. And so I think
Yeah.
it's all aspects of life. But yeah, the subscription model, man, they got that nailed down and they make it. And the newest thing, Patrick, that I think is gonna be super scary. And if you think of like the movie Minority Report, I don't know if we're dating
mhm,
ourselves,
Yep.
but I
Yep.
was watching, and this is not new. It's been for like months, I think. I was watching something on Prime the other night with my wife, and a product comes up on there, and it's like there's a button, click here to buy now and add to your cart, right from the TV, you know.
Yeah.
And I'm
Yeah.
like, pretty soon you're just going to be like, you verbally being like, I like what I see on the TV. Send it to me, and it shows up at 5 in the morning. It's on your doorstep.
Right. Yep.
I mean, we're
Yeah.
not that
No,
far away from it, so it's
I I agree, and I think AI is going to just continue to. And you talked about this, like customizing that content for people. I think it's going to get more and more customized, and all
oh
of the
yeah,
data that is out there floating through the ether because we interact with technology on a regular basis. They know how much money I make, where I spend it, all the things that I'm interested in. And it's like, man, they're gonna like be able to just nail me with the correct marketing message to get all of the brain synapses going. Yep, you need that thing. So, I'm excited about it. I'm also a little, worried about. I just look at the impact of social and technology just on our society in general. And it's like, I don't know if this is leading us down a healthy path. So
yeah.
uh,
I
this is
would.
a whole nother podcast
That is another
conversation, but
podcast. And I
you
also
know,
say when this goes live, I cannot blame, myself if you start seeing ads for CRM consulting or anything else pop up all over the place, you know, or
yeah,
little pigeons flying by with, little banner strapped to them.
sure. Yeah, I love it. So Jason, I think about the stakes here, right? If I fail to take action on, sort of plug in the holes in my CRM, leads will continue slipping through the cracks. Growth fails to scale. It's frustrating, right? And we're just leaving untapped revenue and frustrated clients sort of in the mix. So like, man, I thought somebody was going to get back to me. But then I think about the success side of things. And, when we have a clear automated system that nurtures leads, increases conversions, and creates like measurable, sustainable growth, that's exciting. And that's where, as an entrepreneur, we can get really excited about the future and scaling our business. And so I think this is good stuff. I think people should check you out. Cultivize.com. Also, you gave us afterthelead.com. I think it's a great place to just get engaged with you and schedule some time, or just check out all the social channels and learn more about what you have going on. But I'm assuming if people do that, they're going to enter your ecosystem, and
Oh, they sure will,
it'll be good.
Patrick.
Yeah, yeah. So,
But, they'll enter it in a very, like peaceful and
mhm,
loving way.
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, Jason, this has been great. Thank you so much for joining us here
Thank
today.
you.
Thanks so much for tuning into this week's episode of the Vital Wealth Strategies podcast. I hope you found real value in today's conversation and maybe even spotted a few ways to capture more of what's already sitting in your business. If you did, I'd love for you to share this episode with another entrepreneur who could use it. Whether it's a friend, a colleague, or someone in your network, you never know who might need to hear exactly this message. And if you're ready to start building your own strategy, the kind of work that helps you save more, scale faster, and keep more of what you earn, make sure to visit vitalstrategies.com/tax. You'll find resources, strategies, and insights that can help you take immediate action. Again, that's vitalstrategies.com/tax. Because great strategy doesn't just reduce your taxes, it accelerates your freedom. And remember, you're a vital entrepreneur. You're vital because you're the backbone of our economy, creating opportunities, driving growth, and making a profit. You're vital to your family, creating abundance in every aspect of life. You're vital to me because you're committed to growing your wealth, leading with purpose, and building something truly great. Thank you for being a part of this incredible community of vital entrepreneurs. I appreciate you, and I look forward to having you back here next week, right here on the Vital Wealth Strategies podcast, where we help entrepreneurs minimize their taxes, master wealth, and optimize their lives.